Hmm. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, welcome to another session of lessons from my mother. It has been a while. It's been a couple of weeks actually, because I've been traveling and I've been busy with conferences and just haven't had the right time, had enough time to set aside for these podcasts. And it's my fault. I take blame for it. If anybody is watching and waiting for the weekly update, I know most people watch these things post fact. So once it's uploaded and it's on the internet, then they end up watching it. I have sometimes have live viewers, sometimes it goes up to 10, 15, but more often people come in, what's he talking about today? And then so I I may be apologizing to the void, but I'm in fact apologizing to myself for not maintaining discipline and showing up every Sunday or Monday to do these videos. I'll try my best to get back on track. It is Eid today, so Eid Mubarak to every Muslim across the world and to any non-Muslim who would like to join in our celebrations. Today is the second Eid, the larger one, so we say, or the savory one. So the first Eid, if you recall, happened a couple of months ago at the end of the holy month of Ramadan, where we fast for from sunrise till sunset for 30 days, and then we celebrate with a gigantic feast of mostly sweet food, but also other food. And this Eid comes a day after the holy annual pilgrimage of Muslims, which is called Hajj. And it took place yesterday in Mecca, and I'm sure hundreds of thousands of people were there, and they were blessed to be there. So I've been to Mecca for an Umrah, but I haven't been there for Hajj. And it is every Muslim's dream. No, I don't wish to speak for every Muslim, but for Muslims who want to practice the faith properly and completely, it is their dream and it is part of their goal to at least do one Hajj. And I'm glad that my parents have had the opportunity to do multiple, and I hope I can do multiple as well in my lifetime. So that happened yesterday, and today we celebrate um, the second Eid by slaughtering a goat or a lamb or a cow. We slaughter an animal and we eat it. So this is called the savory Eid, so to speak. And it indicates, no, what's the other word? Not indicate. Um, it points to an event from the life of the Prophet Abraham. Abraham, um, peace be upon him, was ordered to sacrifice his son Ishmael, and when he was about to complete God's command, God, the archangel Gabriel, replaced the child with either a goat or a lamb. I can't remember, so don't come after me. But it was an animal, and he slaughtered the animal instead. And it was to show Abraham and to the world and to Ishmael uh, the prophet's devotion to the Lord. So that's the celebration that we do today. So Eid Mubarak to everyone, and I'm glad I'm back on track on this holy day where I can touch upon a very important lesson from my mother, and it is about faith. So I'm really glad I'm doing that today. So, express your faith is a lesson that my mum started giving us after we moved to England. So, in Pakistan, where I spent the first decade of my life, we're all Muslims, we're all Pakistanis, we're all the same. Some people may believe a different type or a different sect, but more or less, by and large, we're pretty much the same, and the demographics are the same, and the ethnicity is the same, and so forth. So there's no distinguishing factor there. But when we moved to England, around 2.5 decades ago, it was pre-September 11th, so people didn't really know in our town what Muslim was, what Pakistan was, what Islam is, what Eid is, what Ramadan is. So I remember so many of my classmates got to learn about Ramadan by meeting me. And they say, Ali, why aren't you having lunch? And I say, oh, I'm fasting. Well, why are you fasting? Well, it's the month of Ramadan. What's that? And they used to call, I still remember, they used to call it Ramalamb. Ram a lamb. They would say, "Hey, is it Ramalam?" I say, "It's Ramadan." Ah, what's wrong with you? And we were early teenagers, so we'd tease each other. Obviously, they'd be teasing me, trying to get a rise out of me. But in Ramadan, you can't really lose your cool, right? Not eating is the first part of the ordeal. Not drinking is the second, and then not losing your cool, not losing your control. It's more about a month of self control rather than, oh, I just didn't eat. It's not an intermittent fasting month only. It's a lot about self control. So they got to know about it from me. And the urge at that time for a teenager who's just immigrated to a brand new country, where there are very few similarities between Pakistan and England. We have kept their language and their legislature, but other than that, there's not many similarities. So you go and you're thrown into the deep end in secondary school, and everybody's looking at you like, who's this guy with a different skin tone and hair on his face, and he speaks in a different accent and dresses differently? Who is this guy? So you become somewhat of a novelty object, which I certainly was. And I love the attention, mind you, but even the attention should be adoration, not, oh, what is that? Oh. You don't want to be an object of derision or an object of criticism. You want to be an object of adoration. So the instinct of a child at that time would be to fit in. Just like, okay, I'm gonna tone down my differences, and I'm going to not talk about my religion, and I'm going to dress like they do and speak like they do. I just want to fit in, rather than, look at me, I am the great Muslim in your town, and you must understand me and celebrate me for who I am. That is rarely the instinct. Not even in high school movies would you get a character who just pops in and says, well, look at me, I'm this great person. So I was the same. And I would say, oh, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I don't want to be different. And my mom would say, but you are different. But you are different. And if you don't express your skin or your ethnicity, they're going to see it because you don't look like them. You don't speak like them. You don't act like them. You don't eat like them. The thing that they don't see, which is integral to your identity, is your faith. Why don't you express it? I said, okay. So I would pray, not blocking class. I'd find a place and I'd pray if I had to pray. And during Ramadan, I would fast and I would recite the Quran. Just I would read the Quran, and I would. What else did I do? I would follow the faith. And I remember one of my closest friends. He's still a very good friend of mine, Neil Murphy. Shout out, Neil Murphy. I would tell Neil Murphy would have all these questions about the Quran and about the angels and about what's right and what's wrong and what do you think this, what do you think about that. Neil, still, we've been really close friends for 23 years, and every time, even when we meet now or have a video call now, we jump into that rhythm of curiosity and exploration through science and faith very, very quickly. And I'm so grateful for having such a wonderful friend and his associated friends group. There were 5 or 6 people who were friends with Neil. They became friends with me. So I'm very grateful for those fellows because they really helped me fit in, even though I was an outsider. So they wouldn't try to make me British. They'd teach me slang and they'd help me navigate, but they won't try to change me. I've told this to Neil before. I'm grateful to him even today. And Neil, if you're watching this, I love you. So my mom would say, express your faith and share your ideas. So I started talking about what I believe, and they'd say, well, we don't believe that. And if a teacher was in earshot, they'd say, yeah, that's fine. You don't have to believe that, but he believes that, and he's sharing it, and you should share it. Have open communication with what you believe in, and that way you will maintain respect. Then I went to Turkey, another Muslim country. I was there for 7 years. And in Turkey, a lot of people in my university, because my university is the top ranked university in Turkey, Middle East Technical or to Orta Teknik Üniversitesi. And that is a center of far left ideology. It rallied against the government before, it rallied against Erdogan's government and its imposition. So they would push against religiosity. And I remember being in certain classes which I audited and then took as a fourth year. I was taking master's classes. I remember my professor, who was my dean and my supervisor, I'm still very close to him, and started saying something which was problematic. from the lens of Islam. And I went to him after class and I said, "Sir, Hujam, you were saying this in class. I don't agree with that." And he was like, "That's fine. That's fine." And I said, "But if you say that, I'd want to debate you." He said, "That's fine. You can debate me in class. That's fine." And I said, "But what if it goes out of hand?" He said, "Look, I'm a professor. I can guide it back correctly. But what is your concern?" And I said, "Well, you were saying this about Muslims and that about Muslims, and you said this and that." And I said, "Yeah, but isn't that all that true?" And I said, "Yeah, but you don't understand." And I said, "No, no, no. Let's function on the assumption that I do understand. Then what would you say?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Why don't you think about it?" And I remember that was fourth year. After that, I did a whole master's with him as my supervisor, and we discussed God and religion because he was a devout atheist and I'm a devout Muslim, and we'd have these conversations, and and they turned less into a battle and more into an exploration. And I love that because he was heavily political and would look at God through the political lens. And my roommate at that time, who is a lovely, lovely fellow, Tansu Delan, is a physicist who went from Ottu to Harvard, and then he went to MIT, and I think now he's in Seattle. Also devout atheists, and we would spend hours after dinner, just both on our laptops, but also chatting like, "What do you think about this? And what do you think about that?" And we talk about God and sapiens and evolution and science and talk about it in detail, not disrespectfully, very respectfully, but clear on our points of view. And I remember Fansu suffered on a day. I remember it clearly because his girlfriend, now wife, called me that day and said, "Look, he's upset and I'm at home, I'm far. Can you look after him?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." He was upset about something which was resolved in a couple of days. But I remember I tried to talk to him rationally and said, "Look, these things happen and you've missed a deadline. It's okay." And it didn't work. And suddenly something inside me spoke to me and reminded me of my mother's words to express your faith. So I said, "Look, I know you don't believe in God. I know. But because I do, let me tell you what I feel in this situation." I told him that you can replace the term God with the universe or with the electroweak force or whatever the four basic forces, or you can replace it with fate, or you can replace it with um, intelligent design, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, there is a governing dynamic. And you may be feeling what you are in real time in first person in the fourth dimension. But there are multiple factors at play which are coordinating and governing your lived experience. So in Pakistan, we have this wonderful song by my favorite singer, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, which says, "Koi to hai jo nizam hasti chala raha hai, wahi khuda hai," which means there is someone who is um, maintaining the governing dynamics uh, of existence. That is God. And it's a wonderful song. Please Google it, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. Wahi khuda hai. That is God. So I sent that to Thansu, and shockingly, it kind of reached him because before that, he was beyond, because on his own, he could achieve all the rational problem solving, but the faith part, I was adding to it because he didn't believe in it. And suddenly he said, "Yes, maybe you're right." And I saw his brow was like this, and suddenly he did this. And I remember he was like, "I don't know, I just get really worried." And I said, "No, that's perfectly fine. But my understanding of this is you've done everything right. You've done everything you could. There's nothing more you can do. There's no point in losing sleep over something you can't change. So why not leave it to God?" It's very South Asian, very Middle Eastern. Yeah, bosh biryani. Why don't you leave it to God and God will handle it? And God did. 2 days later, the whole problem was resolved. And I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Yeah, I was just worried about nothing." And I was like, "Exactly. But you were near suicidal. Oh, what's going on?" The same problem has repeated itself with other friends of mine who may be atheists or Christians or Muslims or of any faith. We talk about God all the time. When I was in Oxford, I used to underplay it a bit. Again, the same fitting in dynamic was happening, and I thought, I have too many identities. I was born in Pakistan, grew up in England, studied in Turkey, escaped an attempted coup, came back to England, got into Oxford. Now I'm studying South Asian politics. First, I was studying architecture. There's too many things. Let me simplify this. Let me just be this guy from the north of England with Pakistani heritage, and now I'm in Oxford. And let me just simplify that. And I have political aspirations, everyone knows this. I'll go to the Oxford Union and the Oxford Guild and the Oxford Forum, the Oxford Majlis and the Oxford Maze Anthology, and be part of my college committee, get elected. Just play that role of the educated British university student. Let me not talk about faith, and let me not talk about Islam, and let me not talk about, because I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I'm here in this great school and I don't want to waste time in activities which are going to affect my grades and jobs. And went with that mentality. And for the first couple of months, that's where I was. No, in all honesty, first couple of months, that is exactly where I was. I was just participating in events and not talking about religion or faith because I didn't want to ruffle feathers. I just wanted to fit in. And I went home for the winter, and I remember saying this to my mum, and she said, "Look, it's fine to fit in. You don't want to ruffle feathers or cause commotion, but you're functioning on the assumption that your expression of who you are is going to cause commotion. So you must align with yourself who you are and be satisfied with it. Because once you're satisfied with it, others will be too. Stop worrying about, "Oh, I don't, and what if it affects my grade, or my professor's upset?" And no. Don't impose it on other people. There's no harm in expressing it. So I went back after the winter and I did just that, and very quickly everyone accepted it. "Ali, aren't you drinking?" "No, I'm Muslim." "Oh, okay." Before that, I'd say, "Oh, no, not now. Maybe later. And I said, "No, I don't drink." "Okay, okay." "Hey, Ali, aren't you coming?" "No, I have to. I'm fasting." "Oh, no, I'm doing this." Very quickly, everyone adapted. I became more involved in the Islamic Society. I became more involved with the Majlis Society, the Pakistan Society. And even though I was with the Oxford Union and I was appointed with the Oxford Union, it was very well respected. Like, this is what Ali believes, this is what Asta believes, this is what blah 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 believes, and this is perfectly fine. And it was so easy. And I remember speaking to friends and speaking to professors and colleagues, and one of my, I shouldn't name him because it's a private matter, but he was a big person in my college. He was in an important position. I'm not going to name him because this is a private matter. I remember him because I would converse with him a lot, and a faculty member, and I would converse with him a lot. And he one time mentioned some familial issue with his spouse, and about not divorce, but more related to, we're living here and she wants to do this, and just it came out. And I said, "Do you know there's a time for everything?" I almost said his name. I'm not going to say his name. "Do you know there's a time for everything?" And that time isn't really appointed by us. We think we are making decisions, but in fact, decisions are made by us when the time comes. And he first nodded, "Yes, you're right." And then when I explained a bit further, he said, "What do you mean exactly?" And I said, "Well, I believe that I have some free will in existing as I am, but in fact, there's a larger tapestry at work with a larger puppet master, the divine Lord, arranging things for me, which allow me to navigate in certain manners." So, like Steve Jobs says, when you look at things coming at you, you don't seem to connect them. But when you look back, all of them connect and make sense. So I said that to him, and a devout Christian, that man is, and that helped him so much. A Muslim expressing his faith to a Christian, and it was helping the Christian connect back with his faith. Because the thing about faith is, it is there for most of us, and most of us take it for granted and forget. And many times we only remember it when calamity strikes. And that's not right. In fact, you must remember God not only in failure, but more so even in success. When you're at the top and celebrating, your instinct is to say, I am the king of the world. But the truth of the matter is, God is the king, long live the king. You know, that's the truth of the matter. Um, what's that phrase, man? God is good. What is it? Oh, I forgot. God is good. They say it in church. Uh, I'm forgetting it right now. But that is the truth. You are not the king of the world. God is the king of the universe, and it helps you remember that at that time. So I said that to my Christian faculty member. Thank God I'm not. His name is here, and I don't want to say it to maintain his anonymity and privacy. Same thing has repeated here with faculty members and friends and office colleagues and anybody who I run into. Um, because I used to hold it back. I would never talk about faith and religion and God and angels and leaps of faith and diving in. So when I gave my TED talk 2 years ago, I made a point of talking about leaps of faith, having faith in a fear-free life. Um, was the central point, taking a leap of faith. Um, and faith means different things to many people, but more often than not, you can tie it to religion or some sort of religiosity. And I have friends even today who shall remain nameless who are going through problems in their studies, problems with finding jobs, problems with current or recently finished relationships, problems in family dynamics, problems with heartbreak, problems with loneliness and loss, problems with identity, existential problems, all sorts of friends. In fact, I've just named the first 7 people who are very important in my life from my friends group, and they're all going through something. And when I used to counsel them or support them in the beginning, earlier times, there have been times, I would try not to talk about religion and God. And I say, well, they don't share my belief. Why should I talk about my belief? I'll talk about something that they believe in. And then my mum's lesson would come back to me and I'd say, well, I'm a Muslim, so this is what I believe. And if I were you, this is how I'd do it. And they'd listen to it and they would forget the fact that Ali's a Muslim and he prays prays a different amounts of time, a different sort of prayer, goes to a different religious building, follows a different religious structure, and they would focus on the faith part. One of my friends last year had some issue with his heart. Thank God nobody knows that. Only a few people know that. And I remember I went to see him. He's a very inspiring fellow. He counsels and guides hundreds of people um, every few months, and he's a very important force in the Montreal ecosystem. Wow, anonymity is so hard, huh? I have to be very careful with what I'm sharing. And he had some issues with his heart. I remember um, he shared it with me once at a cocktail event. He shared it, and I said, "Oh, we should talk." He said, "Yeah, yeah, I'm trying not to." And then I went to him and I wrote to him on Instagram, and I said, "I'll be here." I'm trying not to say who it is. I'll be here at that time if you're free, because I needed some of his help as well. So I said, "I'll be here at this time. If you're free, I just want to talk for 5-10 minutes." He said, "Sure." And I came and I said, "Let's go in that room and talk." And I said, "So what's going on?" And he said, "I've had this palpitation. It's affecting this. I haven't been able to do this X, Y, Z." And I could see his face. And I'm not the best judge of details. I'm not as perceptive as I am intuitive. But once you give me the information, I can analyze it better than most. So I was watching him and he was saying these things, and suddenly I felt that this fearless man was feeling a lot of fear. And I said to him, "What are you afraid of?" And he said, "I'm afraid that it stops beating. I'm afraid that I sleep and I don't wake up. I'm afraid I got a sinking feeling which I've never had in my life." And I said to him, "How low do you think you can sink?" He said, "At that time, it felt like it was endless. It felt like I was sinking into a bottomless pit. I said to him, no pit is bottomless because even at the bottom of that pit, there is God. And He is in every fiber of your being. He's at the center of your soul. And I was saying it just like this, just staring at him. He started tearing up. Started tearing up. Mind you, this is a local Western person. Anonymity is so hard. He's a Western person in their culture here. Crying with a friend or somebody you occasionally see isn't very common, huh? It's different in collectivist cultures, but in the individualist cultures, you don't really see that, people crying at work. But he started tearing up, and I grabbed his shoulder, and something was reaching him when I was talking about God. So I doubled down and I said, in every breath you take, every move you make, to quote Sting, in every gesture, every thought, every feeling, He is there. You are never alone. That pit is not bottomless, it is merely dark. And God is dark, and God is light, and He is nothing, and He is everything. So if you don't have the strength, you can loan my strength. If you don't have faith, I will lend you my faith. If you don't have, what else did I say? If you don't have a vision or foresight, I will give you my foresight, because mine comes from an endless source, which is the divine. I didn't say it so eloquently as I'm saying now. Or maybe I did, because his face was like, um, lips was shaking and his eyes were, um, um, what's the word, watering, and he cried a few tears. And I gave him a hug, and we stood up and I gave him a hug, and I said, "You're not alone. You're not alone, man. I know we're not the best of friends. I know you through work and through professional work, but I'm here for you because my God is here for me. So I'm not afraid of anything, to be very frank. My God is here. My God is through me. I'm merely a vessel, and you are a creation of God. You may not believe in God, but I do, and I'm giving it to you." Oh, it washed over him like a ball of light, and he like woke up. And then I remember speaking to him a couple of days later, because he was trying to help me find work, and he wrote to me and he said, "Thank you for coming that day. It pulled me out of something I didn't know how to get out of." And I was like, "Ooh, that was hard. That's hard, huh? That hits the heart." And I said, I'm here for you, my friend, always, always." And I've been dealing with some other friends who have some concerns or worries in their life. I say the same thing. And it's such an honor to be able to share my Lord's words and my Lord's existence with them, and to tell them that what you can't see is also God, and what you can see is also God. We associate darkness with nothingness. If you only could understand Shiva from the Hindu mythology, if you could only understand Zahir and Batin from Islam, or if you could understand nothingness and everything, or if you can understand dark matter, antimatter, matter, um, you know that there is no emptiness, there's no isolation. You don't feel those things. You can dig deeper, and one of the best ways to do that is faith. 28 minutes. I'm going to stop now. I also want to express a deep gratitude to Mr. Zahir Rana, Ms. Dura Hassan, the children and the house who just invited me over for a lovely, lovely Eid dinner. I'm very, very grateful for them. And also to Samad Razak and Nahid Aziz, who've become sort of elder brother and sister to me in Montreal, and have a lovely restaurant downtown. And I was also with them. It was wonderful to be with a community on Eid, because sometimes I'm just alone, or I try to find friends and celebrate together. And I have some friends who are celebrating alone, and I give you all my love. And as soon as I see you, we'll celebrate together. So Eid Mubarak. And I will stop here. Have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead.